Good morning. We need to talk about your next essay. So hopefully you turned in your critique essay last night, and then we're going to move on to our explanatory synthesis essay. So this is the part in the semester, and we talked about this a little bit last week, that you can choose a topic and stick with that topic for the rest of the semester. This is what I recommend doing just because you're going to be able to build up some sources and kind of just get to know your topic really well before we get to the argumentative research paper. So you're going to need 6 different sources for this essay, and then the next essay you will need 2 sources, and then that will get you'll start the argumentative essay with 8 sources if you will stick with this one topic. So what the textbook says is an explanatory synthesis is that it's a written discussion that draws on 2 or more sources. So what you're going to be doing for this essay, and the next essay, you are not arguing anything. You're not arguing. All you're doing is looking for relationships between sources, okay? So if you look at this paragraph, it says, the summary and critique essays have let you exercise skills that will come in handy for this essay. This is the easiest research essay that you will write in this class. My video is frozen. Hold on. Come on, internet. You can do it. Everything's frozen. Come on. I apologize. I left my school computer at school and I'm on my home computer, and so now it's like ridiculous. Okay. So you're picking one topic and you're going to argue it later, but in this essay you're just looking at how are these sources related? What kind of relationships can I find about these sources? So the book says that some relationships among the material in your sources must make them worth synthesizing. It follows that the better able you are to discover such relationships, the better able you will be to use your sources in writing synthesis or syntheses. One thing that I do want to tell you is, like, when you get to college, this might be dependent upon like what field you go into. This skill is going to come in handy. I'm in a master's class right now, and I'm writing a paper that I have to do a lit review on. And so I'm taking a bunch of sources and I'm looking at how are these all connected and related to each other. And so you're only going to be doing it with 2 sources per paragraph, but you are going to be able to use this skill after this class. Okay, so let's talk about sources really quick. For this class, I'll tell you where I want you to find your sources, kind of like how we've done for the argumentative paper in the past. And then you can use Crowder's website if you need to. You can also use the school's EBSCOhost website, and I'll give you some information about where to go to find that. Let me just kind of run down like where you're going to find your news articles. You can use ABC, NBC, CBS, BBC, NPR, and PBS. These are all going to be pretty neutral landing news outlets. We're not going to use Fox or CNN because those are more biased. If you know that a source leans heavily, like too heavily, I'm frozen again. Oh, there we go. Okay. If you know if a source leans too heavily right or too heavily left, we're not going to use that. We want to stick with fair sources that hit things right in the middle. Okay, so for this essay, you will be finding 6 sources, and 3 of them are going to be from EBSCOhost. Okay, if my internet will let me, I will post another video that kind of refreshes our memory of how to use EBSCOhost. But that is the big thing, is that you have to have at least 3 from EBSCOhost, and you can't have any more than 6 sources for this essay. If you start to add more than 6, it's going to mess up the organization of the paper. Okay. I also prefer that you would have sources that have authors. If you can't find an author, that is fine. But I want you to email me so I can look at it, like send me the link and I will check that out. Okay. So let's talk about topics. You can write about what you want to argue. That is fine. But it needs to be something that is somewhat relevant and that you're going to be able to find a lot of research material over. Because obviously if you can't find a decent breadth of sources for it, then you're probably not going to be able to write a good argumentative paper for it. So let me just emphasize again, In this essay, you are not arguing anything about your topic. We're not arguing here, okay? We're gonna find 6 sources about your topic and show the relationships between those sources, okay? So here's some topics that we're not gonna do. We're not gonna research anything that has to do with abortion, LGBTQ rights, gun control, marijuana legalization, or the death penalty. Okay, those topics have been done and done and done, and I am very, very aware of what both sides of those topics are. So we're going to pick something different, okay? And I will give you, I don't have it posted yet. I'll get that posted. I'll give you another document that kind of helps you remember where to go to find some topics. Here's how we're going to organize the essay. It's going to be a simple 5-paragraph essay with an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and conclusion, okay? The book suggests that you organize paragraphs by the common ideas that you find within your sources, not the actual sources themselves, okay? So if my sample topic is school uniforms, okay, and let's say that I don't want to argue that in this essay, I just want to research school uniforms. So what I maybe want to look up, and I can think of these different things before I start researching, or I can research and then find these topics as I begin to read different materials. Obviously, we have to talk about cost. We have to talk about how our school uniform is going to be enforced and what is the community's response going to be to school uniforms, depending on like the school, depending on the socioeconomic status of the school, different things like that. So, but I'm not arguing. All I'm doing is presenting facts about a controversial issue, okay? So I could begin, like I said, I could research with those 3 things in mind, hoping to find 2 sources for each of those ideas. Or I could just begin researching as I find sources and then begin to find the common themes within those sources, okay? So there's 2 approaches to research, and they're summarized for you here. Here's my sample outline. Here's a sample thesis for you. Schools who debate implementing school uniforms will need to be educated on the cost, how they will enforce the uniforms, and what the community's response will be. Now, someone could argue my thesis saying that these things aren't important, but the point that I'm making here, I'm not saying whether school uniforms are good or bad in my thesis statement. Does that make sense? All I'm saying is, here are the 3 things that if you're going to enforce school uniforms, or if you want your school to implement them, you're going to have to look at, okay? Now, here's the breakdown of what my source organization might look like for this essay. So let's say that I go find 6 sources. I have them lettered A, B, C, D, E, F. Those are my 6 sources. But when I go to organize them in my, when I go to like, kind of like talk about what are these sources about, source A is going to be about cost. Source B is going to be about enforcement. Source C is enforcement. Source D is cost. And then E and F are community response. Now it could be labeled different ways. The point here is that I'm going to organize it like this. So I'm going to look, as I'm reading my sources, I'm going to kind of make some notes and be like, well, this source leans more heavily toward cost, or this source leans more heavily toward community response. And then when I figure out where my sources match up, then I'm going to organize them. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, well, A and D are both about cost. They're going to go in 1 paragraph together. B and C are both about enforcement. So they're going to go in 1 paragraph together. E and F are about community response. So they're going to go in 1 paragraph together. Okay, and then I explain that again here below. Okay, so that is what you want to do. That is the goal. You're finding 6 different sources. I'm frozen again. My time stops, and okay, there we go. My gosh, this stinking computer. Oh my goodness gracious, makes me so mad. Okay, so if my face freezes, hopefully my voice is continuing, because on my end, my face has been freezing. Okay, just ignore my face. Okay, so then your introduction. In your introduction, you're not including any research. You want to give some background info about the topic that you're researching. Why is the topic controversial? If you can find when this topic became controversial and you want to include that, like a year, that's fine. You could talk about both sides of the topic. Why is it important? What do both sides have to say about the topic? Give us enough information that the reader is intrigued and wants to keep reading. Remember that I am your reader, and I want to be like hooked by your introduction. I want to keep reading. If your essay contains any kind of specialized vocabulary, you can introduce that here as well. Make sure you define what that vocabulary is, and then make sure that you end your introduction with your underlying thesis statement. Okay, Your conclusion is not going to be anything fancy. It's not going to be like your argumentative paper conclusion where you talk about like what's going to happen if what you argue for isn't followed through with, because you're not arguing anything here, okay? So your conclusion, you're just going to start with your rephrased version of the thesis statement, and then the rest of the conclusion is really similar to what we've done before. Just summarize it and then be done. Your works cited page, I've got some works cited examples here, and then we'll go over those works cited things again in class, and then I've got some parenthetical citation notes for you as well. Okay, let's go to the rubric really quick. I'm probably getting close on time here. Notice everything up in this box should be pretty similar to what we've seen before. Your MLA, notice your page length, we're up to 2.5 pages now simply because you've got more researched material. You need 2 direct quotes in your essay, and that's it. Everything else needs to be paraphrased. This tells you about sources here, 3 sources from EBSCOhost, 3 sources from other internet sources. So I don't really care what sources you use. You can use newspaper, online magazine, news sources, any other reputable kind of government source, something like that. Your conclusion, and then your works cited page. So this essay is worth 125 points. So the essays, you will notice they will start to be worth more points as we continue on with the semester. Okay, here is a sample body paragraph for you. You can come back and look at regarding how I, interpret how to put together a paragraph about the cost of school uniforms. So this first piece of evidence is directly quoted, and then my second one is paraphrased, so you can kind of see how I worked through that. And then I've got everything color coded down here below for you. So that can be a resource for you as well. I'm going to pause this, or I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to upload a second video that goes over how to go back and look through EBSCOhost to look for topics, and I'm going to post one more document to classwork that I forgot to post.